So we live for graphs.
I should have drawn a graph behind me.
Yeah, a
Darn
pretty
it.
graph. We live for a good looking graph. I'm not positive of how accurate this number is, but we capture like 1 million perfs a minute of stuff that's going on in the game, and huge number of categories. And it's like sometimes a needle in a haystack to find the graph you care about. But someone put that in because they cared at one point in time, which is why we tend to not remove them because it might be important again someday. But so and a big thing is distinguishing between just internet hiccups and actual long-term trends, and that's where the graphs make a big difference. And so we have our favorite graphs. I have my favorite set of graphs. Robert has his favorite set of graphs. We have sort of a standardized set that we put out for people to see. You can just generally see the health of the game.
Hello, and welcome to the Game Developer Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Editor Bryant Francis. When I was in high school between 2004 and 2008, I took it for granted that if I wanted to play an online game like Guild Wars on evenings or weekends, I was probably going to have to queue up for like 5 to 10 minutes, sometimes even longer. But engineers like Stephen Clarke-Willson and Robert Neckorcuk have spent years working to knock those queue times down to zero and explore how their colleagues at ArenaNet can make great new expansions for Guild Wars 2, a game that itself is now over a decade old. These days, Clarke-Willson is the game director of the original Guild Wars, keeping that old beast up and running. Meanwhile, Neckorcuk is still chugging away on Guild Wars 2, doing his best to keep those uptime graphs in the shapes they're supposed to be. We're thrilled today to have them both on the Game Developer Podcast for a conversation about the intricacies of keeping online games, well, online. And Stephen, Robert, welcome to the podcast. It's awesome to talk to you guys today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and expose the deadly sin I did before the call, which was not fully understand Stephen's job title. I had completely forgotten that Guild Wars, the original Guild Wars, the one my brother played and I flirted with back when I was in high school, is still online, still around. So before we talk about anything else, one, I need to own up to that for our listeners because we're all flawed. We all make mistakes. And two, Stephen, it gives me a great springboard to just jump into an intro question for you, Stephen, which is like, what is it like to still be directing, still be helping keep this beloved old game online for all these years? Like, what do you, I know there's probably a lot of answers to that question, but what is it like?
So it's changed over the years. So I have had other roles in the studio, and we basically let Guild Wars run itself for several years. And when it was time to move it into AWS along with Guild Wars 2, Guild Wars 2 team was very busy doing that. So I said, I remember how that works. I'll move Guild Wars 1.
Yeah.
And that was a great way to, get an understanding of what actually was going to be required in AWS. Guild Wars 2 way more complicated, and a huge team to do that move, and 3 people from Amazon would come visit us regularly to help out. It was amazing. But so while we were working on that, one of our data centers in Frankfurt blew up. They had 3 uninterruptible power supplies, and as they went to test the third one, it put a big power spike down, all electrical, and fried a bunch of our computers and our networking gear. So our IT team, remotely working through other people, reassembled and moved stuff around. And I was like, well, I'll just, because I think Guild Wars 1 is latency friendly, I'll just move the European data center over to the US. No one will know. It'll be great. And, I'd try it. I'd VPN over to Frankfurt or wherever, Spain, wherever. And it seemed great to me, but I thought, I don't really know that this is working well. So I went on Reddit and I said, hey, is it okay if I post? We sort of have a rule that ArenaNet people can respond to Reddit posts, but we shouldn't start them. So I asked the GW1 mods, do you have the same rule we have on GW2? And they're like, no. Please speak up. Okay. Hey, everyone, how's it working? I did this thing, and they're like, it's terrible. What do you mean? It works on my computer. And that's sort of when I started getting involved with the community. Before that, it was all back-end stuff and maintenance and keeping the game alive. which mostly it does on its own. It was a part-time job, but I'd spend a few hours every week, kicking the tires and making it better, aside from the times moving it to AWS. But that's when I really got into it and started talking to players. And then Reddit at the time, every post was, "Is this game dead?" I'm like, "No, I'm not dead yet." So you started interacting with players, and they told me stories about their ping that I was like, that like 3-second ping. Like, that's not even possible. That would be around the world, like 20 times or something, or more to get a ping like that. And it turned out there was a bug that had been there before launch that also had been in Guild Wars 2, which I had also fixed several years before when Heart of Thorns came out. But I hadn't really connected it all together. So having figured that out, I fixed that bug. And then there was another bug more recently where the amount of logging the game was doing was impacting ping. So between fixing those two, it's really steady now. Yay. And then that's when I started talking to players, and then I did an AMA, which was fun. And people started, "Hey, what about this? What about that?" Millions of features they wanted. And I said, well, let's start a list of the low-hanging fruit because, this isn't my full-time job, but I'll do simple stuff. And then I had an idea for 6 lines of code that would change the way the game rendered. So Guild Wars 1 is very tricky. And when you do a screenshot, it actually switches the game into the highest possible resolution and settings for graphics, takes the screenshot, and then goes back to your regular settings. And I realized that if I just put it in screenshot mode and left it there, it looks way better. And so it was like 4 lines of code to add a command line parameter because I didn't want to do UI programming, and then the 2 lines of code to say, go into screenshot mode forever. But that got a lot of buzz. Someone's like, "Wow, a graphics update." It's a miracle. And Wooden Potatoes did some time on it. And then I started interacting with the community more. And so it's just as I've interacted with the community and I've seen how dedicated they are, it's just sort of changed my whole view. We had a compiler bug where the game would crash when a projectile would go, let's see, what is that? This is perpendicular. This is the other thing that's not perpendicular. Parallel to a surface and crash. And it was really hard to find. It was in the hardest content. I couldn't play the content even with cheating. And people send me videos and and they're just dedicated to helping me fix it. And because we can do multiple builds in a day that don't really impact people, I could put test cases in and finally track it down. So I don't know, just the more I talk with the community, the more impressed I am with how dedicated they are to the game. Just changed my whole worldview.
Yeah, that's such a cool glimpse of, or apologies. I was going to say that's just such a cool glimpse of how as games age, like some of the doors that previously things had to be kept a little more locked tight might open up as attention is elsewhere. Robert, I was only going to pivot to you to ask, do those problems that Stephen's describing, compared to what you're dealing with on Guild Wars 2, do those sound quaint, perhaps? Do they sound like, oh man, I wish I could be solving those problems instead of whatever modern beasts you're fighting with, the also I'm trying not to say old, wizened, long Guild Wars 2's been around for a minute is what I'm getting at, but it's actively updating.
Yeah, it's been a little. I was going to try throwing him under the bus to remind him that we're in another data center with Guild Wars 1 as well. That's also a new recent development.
It's true. We once we were in Amazon, we moved back to Frankfurt, and then we also added one in Seoul.
Yeah. So Robert, I was going to say, how do those challenges sound, I guess? Like, how do you feel listening to oh yeah, I wish I could be solving those, or do you are you no, I'm happy solving the ones I'm solving?
I say there's definitely a part where I play the game tagged up all the time. I do love interacting with people. I love, being. I'm not so much the commander. Oh, let me teach you all the mechanics and how this fight works. I'm more just hey, I'm the commander for a common place to aggregate, and hopefully everyone knows how this fight works. But outside of that, in terms of we fortunately have a team of experts who work with the community, find again either what the common issues are, what the play styles they love to do are, and again my role really is, connecting with and empowering the teams here to be able to put out that content and do these things. Mm-hmm. So, hey, we've got this new expansion coming up. All right, we're going to look at, what's our map perf? What's the budget for elite specs? Can we do all these things? And, again, just empowering our internal teams. We can we can do this, we can do that, we can spend a bit more money on some servers, and make sure that we're able to give this great experience to our players. So at the end of the day, the core is the same. It's all about the players.
Yeah. Robert, Stephen, you both talked about the move to AWS. I feel like AWS and other cloud providers are one of the biggest changes in, the classic MMORPG environment, in my lifetime. Because when I was in high school in the Guild Wars, EverQuest 2, World of Warcraft years, and the idea of, server queues being basically something that's just going to happen. Those regular server downtimes were such almost par for the course, but it feels like online games everywhere have evolved as these new online services have come online. From your guys' perspective, it sounds like the move itself was pretty challenging, but once you made it through to the other side, what do you think opened up possibility-wise for y'all for each of your projects, Guild Wars 2 and Guild Wars? What do you think became possible once this new tech became part of your workflow?
I'll go. All right. So the big change, when we ran our own data centers, it is probably true that in some situations, and for a lot of people, you can make the case it's better to run your own. I think if you're really, really big, it might be good because you can amortize the staff to support it. And if you're really, really small, and you're just taking care of your few computers, it's, you're not paying these rental fees. We're sort of in the sweet spot where we have enough servers that we get the amortized benefit of AWS fixing a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the big thing, though, is that you don't have to do this big capital expenditure every time you want to do an upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
We can rolling upgrade our servers, and there have been multiple generations of servers that have come out of AWS that we just slide into without any downtime. That's part of our flexibility. But and just no big capital expenditure, and oftentimes they're faster and cheaper and better.
Yeah.
So that's kind of miraculous, really.
And by capital expenditure, are you referring to having to physically purchase new servers for your own data center to migrate what was on existing servers over to them? I asked out of as the readers may not have detected by now, but writers. I said this joke before the call. I'm gonna repeat it again. Writers, we're scared of numbers, so I'm gonna. Yeah, is that what you're describing?
Yeah, it's millions of dollars. How many millions will be vague, but to go buy all the new equipment and then basically run the game twice while you're moving it, and then get rid of the old stuff. And we don't do any of that, and we can actually do it piecemeal. So
yeah,
and not, by the way, if you're building your own data center, you can't really do it piecemeal. You want to buy everything the same, or you'll lose your mind. Whereas at AWS, we can have a lot of different servers, but the same interface to maintaining them. Which is great.
Yeah, Robert. I was gonna say I'd love to hear from you. What do you think sort of came out of the cloud, the jump to cloud?
Yeah, no, and the two keywords that Stephen mentioned there, flexibility and interfaces, are, I'm going to say, the parts that I see the most of. Again, on that capital expenditure, it's hey, we're going to launch an expansion. Okay, buy however many more blades. Just send an email to Amazon and hey, expect that we're about to do this, and just make sure it's available for us. It's a lot easier and easier for all of us to deal with. The interface side of things is also fantastic, because it's take our patching software. We distribute all our files, around the world, so everyone can go download them. And, a couple of years ago, we actually had a great opportunity with a different provider, and it's sort of hey, we sort of got this interface layer here. We're using, one service. Well, we get a better deal for some point of time, literally just point that way, and now we can use that other service. With CDN providers, I guess that's always been a little bit like that, but even internally, we have some of those options where it's hey, there's a new instance type they put out that's cheaper. Oh, there's a new database solution that's, more robust. We just have all these interfaces, and we're able to say hey, draw the line here, put a little switch, you pointing one way or the other, and give us the flexibility to try out some of these new things. Not all of them work. Sometimes we move a little bit quickly and our dev environment suffers for it, but it's lots of flexibility there.
So, I actually made the decision about when we were going to go, and everyone's couldn't have made it a couple months earlier because that would have been giving us more time. But it was actually several years of looking at it and even talking to Amazon, and their CTO, whose name escapes me, but he's famous, Werner or somebody. But he's always saying something's breaking all the time, right? And I'm like, well, that's not quite going to work for us. Our systems are pretty robust. But if you're in a map and you're playing for hours at a time, you can't just kill the map and have it magically start up with everything where it was and all the players where they were and all the connections. So, everything breaking all the time, you're not really selling me on it. But the quality just kept getting better and better. And we did a test and it was phenomenal. And then it's just been getting better and better and better. And Robert can tell you about this, but since they have the Nitro system, which is really good, things have been more stable and better bandwidth. Now the transition to the Nitro system wasn't great. Robert
made a very pained expression on his face there for the listeners.
Can I show it from my own
Robert
blog
didn't cause
post?
the problem.
Yeah.
He had to fix it though.
Yes, yeah, we the migration between, so this was a big technology change within Amazon. They had a hypervisor framework, I think, called Zen, and they moved it to a new framework called Nitro. And we had again, there's run it in dev, test it, find some more issues, fix all them, and there's really only some issues you don't encounter until you get to the traffic volume or the load of live. And so that was our unfortunate and infamous outage of 2020. Which there was a full blog post and a insight into how we approached the problem, how we broke it down, ended up solving it, and once again being wickedly impressed with our player base, hammering on the API the entire time of is it up yet? Is it up yet? What's the rollback status? What's this, that? And it was literally within 1 minute that we had that part of the service back online. Everyone's like, the game's going to come back online soon. I see this. My character progress is up, up to this point in time, so it didn't lose data. And it was like, oh man, you guys, let us get the game online first.
Yeah, it's like, give us some room here. It's like when you're trying to get oh no, something spilled in a restaurant or whatever, and they're like, hang on guys, we got to clean it up. But then just because it looks like a clean, someone comes in again and goes to the bar, and it's like, no, hang on. Then you're like, dang, we should have had someone watching the door. So that, why didn't you have someone watching the door, Robert? Why couldn't actually? No, yeah. Well, when you're thinking back to that moment, for someone who wants to get started in network engineering, game development, this kind of field, in that moment where you're trying to solve a problem and players are able to start hammering your API, does that meaningfully affect your ability to fix it? And what do you think you guys got right at the end of it there? I guess, yeah, how did you, in that moment, when you were at that point of the process, when you were at that point of come on, we're actually fixing it, what do you think you guys did right, even while players were knocking on your door, trying to get in and hitting you while you're in the middle of the room?
Yeah, internally, again, just the process, procedure, the people. We have a wonderful rule here of it's sort of don't bug the engineer, and that came from one of those have a singular person who sort of is the communications owner of an incident, and they're going to be the one that's allowed to hey, every hour, every 2 hours, can we just get a status update? What are you looking at? Is there any new ETA? What's going on? So internally, there's now a single point that, the players, anyone else can go hammer that. Generally a producer, project manager, and okay, this is the state of things. We're updating our internal communication tools. And then the engineer is all right, now we just get to fix on this, and we know we've got a 2-hour uninterrupted block for this. Really the thing with the players hitting the API and doing that, again, everything's interfaced, everything is sort of every part of the system is in its own silo. So as we're bringing stuff back online, it's okay. Turn the database on first, turn the cache on next, turn this application layer on next, turn the web service on. So it's really, we're going through an incrementally, restarting the things that we had to stop. And it's just a natural process. And it's almost the nicety that the players are so excited for this. Our job and our opportunity there is, again, to make sure we turn everything on in the correct order, because that's where, we don't run into those issues of the players hammering things like, oh, no, you're making it worse. But actually, and again, we cite the move to AWS as a big thing, and it really was in the moment and afterward, because a similar runbook had to get built. What do we migrate over first? What service do we move next? How do we make sure, for them, it was how do we make sure we do this all in a way that it's seamless to the players? In our case for this one, it's how do we make sure it's seamless? For each new service we spin up, it should be seamless to all the other supporting services behind it. So, and in that particular instance, it was perfectly fine that the players had access to the API and were able to see all that, because everything, it was almost reaffirming to us, like, we've got these tests, we have QA going in and checking all these things. And yes, sorry players, our QA got access to the live game like 30 minutes before you did, because they had to do their smoke test. But it was reaffirming to us that, like, okay, cool. We're now seeing that load, that traffic starting to hit this. We had this fix, and everything is, working as we expected it to. So, yeah.
Kind of a follow-up question for you guys, since we've surprisingly arrived in orbit of AWS, this titan of online technology. I was having a conversation at Game Developers Conference this year. Disclaimer: Game Developers Conference is our sibling organization, et cetera, et cetera. We've had that for many years. And I was having a chat with someone about like the intricacies of cloud service things and how so many games now rely on it, right? And something someone brought up was like, AWS powers a lot. It seems it gets the job done for a lot of people, but it is a service designed for a wide range of applications as opposed to something more curated. Is there anything you guys have been doing, online networking for games for ages, like as you worked to get this new system online, what do you think is unique about how games handle online networking compared to other services that you sort of like had to bring to Amazon and go, hey, this is how we do things, and like kind of get them to understand that no, you can't change that. You can't do it better just because it works better for a bank, right? Like, were there any examples of that as you, began that kind of switch?
I mean, the big immediate one that comes to mind is, I'm going to say synchronizing these databases. And that's, I don't want to say it's a unique challenge to us, because again, we don't know what every company out there is doing, but, our goal is anyone can play the game whenever they want, however they want. So like, we really, can't/don't want to even take a half-hour downtime to make sure all the transaction logs have caught up and then cut over to using the new one. So that in particular was still is, and we're still making changes to services and new features, things coming out, and so much of it is around that. Sometimes it's a little bit of extra process, legwork, an extra tool we have to write to make sure that we're able to seamlessly make this change that we're expecting to do. So
moved in 2017. We needed what's called a direct connect, basically from our data center to AWS in Virginia and Frankfurt. And there are a number of parties involved with that. There's the two data centers in Frankfurt, and I guess it was in Dallas. There's AWS, and then there's a bunch of ISPs. There's providing traffic, and get the direct connect thing was complicated. Now I think it's more common now. It's kind of a service. People just kind of call up people and get it done. And with all those parties involved, it's easy for someone to point at someone else and say, well, they broke it.
Mm-hmm.
And what was great about Amazon is they have, network engineers that know everything. And they would say, no, this is where it's broken. And they would go talk to whoever was at fault. Go, no, this is exactly the fix too. And I think without that level of muscle behind getting a direct connect, again, this is back 2017. I think it's a lot easier now. But that made the day. And that's what we needed, to synchronize databases without any downtime, to literally move everything from all the players effectively from Dallas to Virginia, and then from Frankfurt to Frankfurt, a different place in Frankfurt.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Frankfurt's big. Not Dallas to Virginia big, but, hey. Robert, kind of spinning back to the Guild Wars 2 chair for a moment. What's impressive about Guild Wars 2 is I think about this game that, launched like a fair number of years ago, and everything I hear from devs about one reason, you sunset a game and then bring a sequel or a new game online is, like things get out of date and you run out of the ability to make new content either at a pace that's sustainable or, that's fresh enough to interest players. Guild Wars 2, from my perch, has dodged that problem. And every, last year it was the housing update. A few years ago, I forget what it was a few years ago, but like I'm regularly checking in and going like, oh, I didn't know you could do that with an MMORPG. It's just something I regularly say to myself. Under the hood, from the networking side, what is technically required to enable the design team to introduce new kinds of features that, like, again, someone like me might have gone, I didn't know you could do that in an MMO. Like, what under the hood have you done to sort of make it so that they can be done in an MMO? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, some of the big ones actually, again, lessons from Guild Wars 1 and some of the fundamental architecture concepts of Guild Wars 2. And you can hear this a lot, the database. It's a big important thing here. There's a core design of how do you store your character information? What is the important information you have to persist? What's the information for design or something that you don't need to persist? And for us, we have we basically have this model where so in a database, most relational databases, you've got columns and rows, and each column is going to be like, oh, what's your world location? Next column, oh, what's your health points? Next column, oh, what's this? And you have to do that for every player in the world. Sometimes you do that for every NPC in the world. Sometimes you do blah blah blah. We sort of don't operate in that way because at that point you're sort of like, okay, we're going to add levels. So now you have a column in the database. That's what's your level. Okay, Heart of Thorns comes out, masteries. Okay, now we need to change the database and we need to modify and say, hey, here's a new column in here that allows the mastery system. What's your mastery rank? So instead of doing that, very early in from architecture, it's let's just store all this in a singular like document or blob or this other format that we can just shove as a singular unit into one column in a database, pull out and parse on its own. And so now we want to change something. You want to add masteries. You want to add homesteads. You want to add, these different things. As long as it still fits within that blob in the size of that SQL column, we're able to append and add new information and data to that to keep, getting these features as we need to. We can modify existing ones. We had an old daily login system. We moved to something, the new Wizards Vault system. If we have, this data serialized in this blob, we can modify it, store it the next way, say, hey, now we're in version 7. The next time you load it in, oh, okay, load your version 7 data of this, and we're good to go. And crucially, the database is none the wiser. All of this, all of this business logic is done by the services that we can, arbitrarily spin up, restart, upgrade in place, with no impact to the users. So a lot of that has been baked in from the start. And then the second half is really interesting, finding new ways to reuse existing tools and technology we have. So we have this one service called GroupServe, and it's really just arbitrary collection of things. Potentially the obvious one there's like, oh, guilds, but players that want to play together do this, and we store it that way. Okay, that's really cool. Then we have some things where it's like, hey, we want to run this champion rush event, and we like every single player out in the world is going to go kill some champions, and we want to have a totally aggregated unit of how many champions have been killed in the world. You can do this in an analytics pipeline and fetch all this and, calculate the data an hour or 2 hours later. Or this group serve thing has for every map, you can just say, hey, here's how many champions died on that map. Some made it in real time, and now we can, pop into Lion's Arch and, hey, here's how many champions were killed across the world. So we've got a number of these, services that were built for a purpose, but are pretty agnostic otherwise. That we've just been able to be like, hey, what if we stored this data there, or use this command to do this functionality instead?
Yeah. I think that's so neat. I regularly talk about it on the podcast, and I think about it elsewhere. I have a lot of feelings about the fact that games are shaped by the tools that make them, and in ways that are sometimes so invisible to players and sometimes so invisible to people who work on them. And it's so neat that, like, when a game's tools years ago, decisions were made about them that weren't like super thought about, but like you said, right, to take a system that was meant for one thing and now to make it to, now we can track the number of times this thing died, and then in game, like, like broadcast it to people like it's almost like I don't know this particular event theme, but like almost like it's a sports thing, but that loud sense of interactivity is it's buried there under online games, right? Like, you want responsiveness and being able to expand responsiveness. I don't think, certainly on the player side, maybe even sometimes on the developer side, certainly on the, I am, again, a baby-brained writer side, these things just don't pop into your head, right? And that's just such a cool thing to hear about, that you could repurpose it like that.
Yeah. That's it. It's not always like the people you expect it to either. The culture here of like, hey, the opposite, the balancing act here of like, hey, wouldn't this feature be cool, versus the, okay, hey, what's actually in scope? What do we have time to implement at a quality bar that we expect? So so you get some of those thoughts about, oh, we could use the system this way, sometimes from again, not the core designer of the system, but just some other engineer just looking at this like, I have to design it this way. Well, what if we did this?
And we do make a lot of changes. Like, we upgraded Havoc without, downtime, because the old one was having problems. Like, when you run a game for this many years, some of the third-party tools that you bought, like, go away. And so you have to figure it out. And because we can, update things without too much impact, and we practice that every day. We have, I don't know, I forget, 8 branches or something of people doing simultaneous development. They all get merged every night. And because of that, everybody lives every day what it's like to live in this constantly changing environment. And so, sometimes it's terrifying. Like, one of the stories I like is, it's like being a fighter pilot, like several hours of boredom followed by 2 minutes of raw terror when you actually ship the thing.
Yeah.
But overall, people are, just used to the culture of change.
Yeah. Stephen, you raised something interesting there, which is, when, like you said, and I think this matters a lot because, for a number of reasons, like, companies' back catalog of games, and, just like you guys, other online games that have just, like, that have, the players have just said, hey, we still want this over the years, and the developers have been like, well, shit, yeah, well, you keep wanting it, we'll keep making it. Third-party tool providers, do come and go. Do you remember, beyond Havoc, any particular instances of a third-party, service provider you were relying on a tool provider, closing up shop, and what it was like to transition away from that? Was there anything notable in that, or are they all sort of just like Havoc, where it's like, nah, we just kind of did it?
Well, the big one was changing the front end, the internal web
Mm-hmm.
browser. The one we had before was basically not supported anymore.
Yeah.
And I think we had the source code. Like, we could, like, our legal team's great. They make sure we're not going to just roll over and die. But because we have backups. But going in and changing the source code is not something anyone was expert at. And so we switched over to the latest. What's it called? What's it called, Robert?
Chromium Embedded
Google
Framework, Ceph.
Yeah, right. Yep, the Chromium Embedded Framework, which brought a ton of features, but it was like 20 times bigger than the old tiny thing. And so, but and actually, I think we shipped it twice. The first time there was some issue, I don't remember, and so we unshipped it, which is pretty impressive on its own. And then we fixed all that and then shipped it again, and it was a big deal, but nobody at home knows, right? It was from the player point of view. Initially, it's the same thing. It looks the same, except that a bunch of bugs were fixed. Like, never mind. I'm not gonna tell you about that. But
I want to know.
A bunch of bugs were fixed.
I want to know.
Well, okay. So before we had the web browser built in, we had the Autodesk tool, whatever it was, Flash. We actually had a Flash front end that you would log into the game with. And there was a bug where sometimes if you hit tab, it wouldn't go to the password field. And we, at the time, it made sense to try Flash, and it was a long time ago, right? 2010, probably when that decision was made.
Yeah.
But we had like 2 people that knew how to do it, and then they left or found something else to do, and their tools rotted. No one could fix this bug that sometimes you hit tab and it wouldn't go to the password field, and so. This one time at Bandcamp, so this one time at a company meeting, someone was logging into the game to do a demo, and they hit tab, and then they typed their password, and we all got to see it, which was loads of fun. Because the tab key didn't go to the password field the way it should have. So
You already interjected and changed the password,
that's a big change.
by the way.
That's right, yeah. So, and it wasn't rude. It was funny, though. So, switching away from that entire framework then even to the built-in web server was pretty cool.
Yeah. Stephen, you sort of raised, I think, everyone in every job everywhere deals with some form of this. I think game development and game design, everyone in game development deals with a different version of it. Like you said, when you're in a meeting and you're demonstrating something and then a bug happens and you sort of sit there and you go, oh, shit, that's my department, right? Or like that might not be more than your department. That's your thing, right? Like your thing you're assigned to or working on. On the networking side, again, these things don't always, they don't look, it's easy if I'm in a meeting and all of a sudden the physics, like an arm like goes wiggly wobbly and the animation team like puts their head in their hands and goes, ah, shit, we got to fix that. But on the networking side, like what's it sort of like when you're in those meetings and you experience something like that? Like, I imagine you're both familiar with it, but like, I guess like, what's it like for you emotionally when,
we live for graphs.
You live for graphs?
Like, yeah, a pretty graph. We live for a good-looking graph. Like I'm not positive how accurate this number is, but we capture like 1 million perfs a minute of stuff that's going on in the game, and huge number of categories. And it's like sometimes a needle in a haystack to find the graph you care about. But someone put that in because they cared at one point in time, which is why we tend to not remove them, because it might be important again someday. But so, and a big thing is distinguishing between just internet hiccups and actual long-term trends. And that's where the graphs make a big difference. And so, we have our favorite graphs. I have my favorite set of graphs. Robert has his favorite set of graphs. We have sort of a standardized set that we put out for people to see. You can just generally see the health of the game. There was a time before we moved to AWS where there's a thing called traffic shaping, which I'll try to explain. So if you have a connection, so because Frankfurt and Dallas talk to each other over the internet, and we'd have these long-lived connections, which is not usually how it works. You go to a website, you download a thing, maybe you watch a movie for a couple hours. We have connections that were lasting for weeks. And this thing called traffic shaping that no one will own up to actually happens. Someone goes, that connection's boring. He's not doing a lot. And my router needs to do a lot of the work. I'm going to deprioritize them. And we would see our traffic between the two sites just go near to zero. And we're like, we didn't do anything. And Glenn, who was our architect at the time, he actually wrote some code that would actually switch between different channels based on the network speed because we were getting shaped like that. With AWS, we use their back end and they don't do any evil things like that to us. It's great. but it was a big deal. And figuring out that trend and why some timeouts were happening and that it was actually just these long-lived connections, uh, that's a big deal. That's like where it's sometimes it feels like it's just an intermittent problem, but it's actually a deeper systemic problem. And you figure it out from graphs. That's what our life is. And then correlating to what's happening in the real world. I don't know, it's kind of fun, but it's also pretty challenging.
I see the early days of what was it? Next week is Amazon Prime Day sales, so bump up our network throughput so that we don't get hammered.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say my first emotional response when in those meetings is jealousy, because like when the arm is doing that, everyone knows and sees what's happening. When someone's like, "Oh, let me just log in real quick and show everyone this feature, error code 42. What's that?" No, in this big particular case, when this happens and that happens, this is well, nobody understands, but
Yeah.
No, I love there's an anecdote. The the open, communicative, and sharing teams are the ones that have the most bugs. And I love that. And it's because every time we fail at something, we're okay to talk about it. And it's all learning experiences for our team. So like we go into those meetings and it's almost, oh, a bug happened. Oh, what did we break? Like how I thought this was gonna work, but like, oh man, what? We're definitely fortunate with that whole, eight development branches to be able to, test this before it goes live, obviously.
Yeah.
But the number of times where it's like, oh, these two systems interact in a way that was not expected. So yeah, we go fix that and let it integrate overnight and make sure it doesn't break tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. That is something, we all sort of wish for, right? Is like workplaces where, like raising, if your job is to fix and solve these problems, then it's good to be in a workplace where everyone is on the same page, like, hey, yeah, the problems will occur. That's why we're all here. We're here to fix them. If they didn't occur, well, a lot of us would be out of jobs. And that's just, it's strange that like that's not the case everywhere, right? Like it sounds like ArenaNet's got on lockdown, but like I've certainly been at companies where if you raised an issue, like you better have been ready to demonstrate how you're going to fix it in the next 5 minutes. So, you had some sweat running down your back, I guess.
5-page report on how
Yeah. Talking to your coworkers, I have been thinking recently about how in disciplines I'm familiar with, as I've mentioned before for listeners, like, I've got do work on a game on the side. I'm familiar with the process of trying to translate narrative stuff to folks who don't think as hard about stories as I do in character and such. But you guys, that's a very soft skill translation. And you guys sort of are at a very far end of the field. What have you sort of learned over the years about talking to people who aren't in your field, I guess like myself, talking to people inside your team who aren't necessarily super versed on what you do, but you feel like there's information they need to know that's going to help them do their jobs better, or it's going to help them not make your life as hard. What have you guys learned about like keeping those open lines and like helping them understand, the intricacies of what you do?
Yeah, tools and simplification are really the best ways. We've started, there's definitely more that could be added. We have an internal documentation page. It's literally concepts written simply. And, there's a number of things of like, how do game features get applied to accounts? And it's sort of, there's this smorgasbord of technobabble that happens, but for someone who's designing a new MTX item, designing the expansion team, how do we make sure the people who buy it get access to the new map? They need to just make sure there's a basic understanding of how that happens. We had an incident. So we have a service called Ladder Serve. It's for all of our ranked leaderboards and everything. In one of our Secrets of the Obscure quarterly updates. We had a there's a story step where you play through an instance, you go out in the open world, and we basically feed you and tell you, okay, hey, everyone go play adventures in the open world to, progress to the next part of the story and, learn a little more about your environment. And what hadn't been, either realized or communicated or just, that end-to-end process thought through at the volume of live was how this was, the specific channeling everyone very early in after, releasing the episode. Everyone's going to suddenly go hit all these adventures at the same time. Every time you finish an adventure, it's all going to post to ladder boards at the same time. And with a lot of people targeting a small number of, these adventures, how that actually impacted, the system and the traffic internally, we're suddenly like, oh, why is this graph suddenly shooting up? Because we're all staring at graphs. And so, we had a little debrief afterwards, scaled up our servers to handle the load. And the debrief afterwards, chatting with the design team, and it's a bit, the design of the adventures themselves, the story and narrative team that, lead people to say, hey, go do these adventures. And I literally just opened a PowerPoint and drew like, okay, here's a box, here's a this one's are players, these ones are servers, and here's like 2 or 3 different scenarios of this is the worst case. Everyone just funnels there and everything's bad. Here's a better case where we're sort of distributing, these different points and how they as designers can, learn from that experience so that next time, okay, we're going to tailor what they design to better work with, the technical implementation. So PowerPoint was great for that.
Yeah, and some of it is that we expose to everyone a lot of our internal data. So anyone who wants to can look at our logging, all our internal graphs. If anybody wants to, then go look at them. For a while there, for security, we had it set up one way, but we decided that people kept asking us questions that they could just go answer for themselves. So we gave them read-only access to this stuff, so they don't accidentally bring the game down looking at what a server is doing. But if someone's working on something, we show them how to read the graph, and then they're off on their own, and they're better for it. We're better for it.
Yeah. You guys mentioned staring at charts. I'm sort of picturing, from what I've seen occasionally of previous jobs inside online companies, like the engineer on one monitor doing the work, the chart on the other monitor. Have you guys ever had a big board of your charts, like up so everyone can look up and see it on the wall? Is that something you would even want?
Oh, when we launched, so we've been, a hybrid remote studio since events in the real world.
Those events.
So End of Dragons was probably the singular largest, largest thing that we'd done at a given time. And it was, let's see if we can have a few people in the office on that day, a little bit of celebration, a little bit of launch fun. And so I'd been in the office a few times since then, but it was okay, I'm gonna get my desk set up here. I've got, the 2 monitors over here. Is anybody using this TV over here? Can I just roll it right next to my desk, plug the HDMI straight into the back of my computer, and it's like graph, just big old graphs with the current healthy state of the game, what's going on. If we had prepped this, I could have had that picture ready, but
hey, look, that's what the show notes are for. Maybe we'll find a way to get it there. And that leads me to a more important follow-up question, which is, do you guys ever look at, before something rolls out, do you guys ever take bets on all right, that graph's going to look real ugly in 5 minutes, and someone else goes, nah, 10 minutes. We got 10 minutes till things go south. Does that ever happen on your teams?
I don't think so.
It'd almost be unfair betting because, again, we've been doing this for so long now. We've improved so many of our process. Again, the adventures with Secrets of the Obscure. We've done an expansion, getting ready to do the next one since then. We have a much better idea of what's coming. So it's I'd take a bet, but everyone on the team was just briefed on what's coming. So everyone's going to take that bet because they know what's happening.
Yeah, and we do, just make a list of risks of things that we don't really know are true. So yeah, it's very open.
Yeah.
And if someone's like, haha, I have secret information about how this is going to crash, that person would get a talking to. Like, hey, share that a little earlier, please.
Yeah. That's that. Man, I'm picturing the worst thing, which is you have the big board. Listeners, I promise, I'll get back on topic eventually, but my brain is just in pure shitpost mode of you have the big board and someone hides the secrets. Like there's crash that's going to cause a spike in traffic in some way. And they deliberately do it to carve out a specific shape in the graphs on a big board, the way we used to do with TI-83 calculators, plug in a formula. And they do that to show just how smart they are. And then everyone is mad at them. And for some reason, that's popped right up in my head after you described that, Stephen.
Yeah.
No, thank God.
I did something positive but similar. This was also End of Dragons. I'm sorry, QA team again. We have a number of like timers and things in our systems of like, we allow our QA team to go in and smoke test and trial, make sure we can connect to builds, features are working as they expected before it actually is made live to all of our players. And there's a couple like configurations and timers that modify this behavior. And the unfortunate side for one of these particular timers is you need a previous build to change one of these timers because of how it works. And so normally we're just like, all right, this is the time we have for smoke test, so we have to fit all of our things into this. And it's like, okay, man, it'd be nice if we had doubled that amount of time. It's like, okay, I don't know if you remember, there was actually a decent time span before, from the previous release to the End of Dragons release, and it was like, nope, we're stuck with this. This is what has to happen. There was a really late change, I want to say for like a Black Lion chest or a commerce update, but it required a game build. And I was just like, double the timer, go. But then didn't actually mention it to anyone. And it was just going to be one of those back pocket things of like, we're going to get through all of End of Dragons testing, we're going to get through all this. And if anything happened, I'd very happily go to the QA team and be like, all right, you've got more time, you can do this. And they're like, well, what is it? Everything finished on time, as they initially planned and predicted, but it was like that was in the back pocket. I knew about it without telling the team.
Sometimes secrets you don't even realize you're keeping a secret until it's too late. Stephen, I really, you're still going strong on keeping Guild Wars 2 online, for building this, online second. Did I say Guild Wars 2?
Yeah.
All right, well, I guess I'll die. You're keeping Guild Wars Online, the original Guild Wars 1. We're going to call it by its real title, what you find on mobile games, Guild Wars. You're keeping Guild Wars Online. This really, great second home, for a lot of folks. Like, it's where those social circles are. It's how they wind down from the day. What do you sort of see as the reason to, like, why does someone sort of need to be on it even now, even after you fixed all the things you fixed, as opposed to sort of having it on, humming along in the background like you said it was before? Like, what do you sort of think, how do you think the game benefits from having you still on it all the time, aside from, you just getting to keep your job? What do you think benefits from having active staffing going forward?
Yeah, I mean, time marches on, right? So when we recently had our 20th anniversary celebration, a bunch of new players came back, which was great.
Yeah.
And they came back with their 4K displays.
Oh,
and they're like, I love my 4K display, but this game was designed for probably HD is okay, but 4K not. The just everything's too small. The fonts are too small. And so you're like, 4K displays aren't going away. No one had imagined them 20 years ago, but we should update the game to support 4K displays. So that's important. And then there's just a lot as, again, like Amazon improves or whatever. If you can cut the cost, one reason some games don't survive is they're just too expensive to run.
Yeah.
And GW1 from the beginning was designed to not be too expensive to run at any rate, because there was no monthly fees. First game without a monthly fee, you bought it and then you could play it forever. And their commitment was you could play it forever. And so it's insanely efficient. Having said that, time marches on, and sometimes one person's efficiency is not the same because the environment around it has changed.
Yeah.
So, or, your billing provider changes. It's just the world marches on. So, to keep it to keep it current, it takes that extra TLC, I think.
Yeah. I might just be asking an obvious question, but do you sort of feel like your team has understood the non-tangible, like the non-definable benefit of a player community, of a player community stick around and playing an old game and not being sort of told to shove off into the future if they want to keep playing, right? Like, do you think there is something tangible to that beyond just, trying to do something nice for those players? Like, do you really, how are you, I think I'm asking a question where I know the answer is yes, but I'm curious, like, sort of how you guys define that non-tangible, that, you can't pin a KPI down on it. You can't define a retention rate or a CCU. How do you guys like sort of define that benefit from, still putting that love and care in for those players to make sure they've still got their second home?
I think the most important thing is that by committing to the game, they can feel confident we're committed to GW2. It's scary. It's a big commitment to jump into an MMO. When Guild Wars 2 shipped, it was 17 gigabytes on a double layer DVD or whatever it was back in the day. And now it's 70 gigs. And you want to know that it's going to be there. It's a big investment. It's not, of time. And to get good at it is a big investment of time. And to get engrossed in the lore is a big investment of time. And so you want to have confidence that nobody's going to yank the rug out from under you.
Yeah.
So I think so maybe, I don't know if that's tangible or intangible, but it's important.
Yeah. Kind of heading for the end of our hour here, and what I'd love to do, something I love doing on this podcast, started with the first guest under my tenure, Mike Bithell. I was just like, hey, dude, like, who's on your team would you want to give a shout out to that you don't get to all the time? He's like, can I just list the whole team? And I went, well, today you can. So I have to preemptively bar you guys from that because ArenaNet has a lot of employees. But is there anyone on your team who we're sort of talking about things the players don't get to see, right? People, there's people who don't get as much time to see their work celebrated. So is there anyone on your team you guys would want to give a shout out to before we wind down today, just and sort of explain how they play an important role in what you do and how you get your job done? I guess technically you're allowed to say each other. I guess technically you can say each other. I haven't really tested this with two people before. Need to be clear on my instructions.
I mean, for me, one of the early obvious ones is our office manager. Again, we're hybrid remote, but we've got someone who just cares about everyone at the company, whether they're coming to the office, whether they're not, whether they almost like the original Google of go to her every time because she knows the right person to go to at the end. We've got like the snack thing taken care of downstairs, and when you're just like, I don't like goldfish, I like Cheez-Its, she'll go order Cheez-Its, and then someone else is like, man, I don't like Cheez-Its, let's go order goldfish, and it's like, she'll resolve that. It will get taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many little details of like, we Halloween, winter festivities, the couple times where it's like, hey, we're gonna have a big all hands in the office, like let's get something a little special put together. And it's like, dude, we're just engineers. We want to look at our graphs and write some code, and it's just like, oh, there's this thing in the office. This is a really nice touch. So there's just some great little things like that.
I'd say at a high level, the transition to working remote in 2020 was a big deal, and our IT team was amazing. People are coming in, hauling their computers home, getting the security set up, so we had confidence that whatever they have going at home wasn't going to infect the rest of us. That was a true achievement, and you know, bringing those lessons forward, and then hybrid where we can have a bunch of people in a meeting room and then other people remote with a headset like I am, whatever. That's just all stuff that when it works you take for granted, but it's a lot to set up and it's a lot of cultural change. And so I'll just call out our IT team.
Awesome. Yeah. Office admins and IT teams, often undersung heroes in any company, but in game development, definitely like not the first person you think of when you think of who woke up today and helped make my experience today great in the game. And those departments are down there doing the work and not always front of the list. So Robert, Stephen, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck with keeping each of your respective games online in the years ahead.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
If you're still listening, maybe you should shoot a note over to your IT teams and office admins, thanking them for their hard work. Go on. I'll wait. For more from us at Game Developer, be sure to visit www.gamedeveloper.com, follow us on major social platforms, and subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find me on Blue Sky at brianfrancis.me. Today's episode was edited by Pierre, and our theme music is by Mike Meehan. Thank you for listening. May you too be blessed by players pounding on your API, eager to claw their way back into your amazing virtual worlds.